Hello, hello. So I was thinking about galaxy brains. Probably need to talk about this. Get this on the recorded as saying this. I had an aha moment a while ago when I listened to Connor Leahy on MLST, Machine Learning Street Talk. And in his interview, he was talking about who he perceived to be the most empathetic person, I think. Was empathetic or like loving, caring, something like that. And how if you kind of free yourself from any sort of ought argument and remain in what is or what could be, um, it sounds. Hmm. Looks like some mic issues there for a second. So, okay. So the if you run these thought experiments about, you know, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, you can find yourself in these really perverted places, essentially. And it's kind of unanchored. There's no anchoring to what ought to be. Like you get lost in the sauce because you're so busy studying the map. Ought to is like tethered to infinity or nothingness. the space between something. So like when you zoom in, you'll see you can zoom in infinitely on something, and then at some point in time, one sees that the space between anything gets larger and larger, that there ultimately is nothing there. And that would be like the finest coarse graining possible. Like if you could run, if you could hold in your mind that like a series of logical steps that were like hundreds of like hundreds of steps long or something, which I mean, I just don't think anyone, maybe some humans could do that, someone with like a photographic memory or something really phenomenal. But I think that at some point you kind of can't recall what all initialized the thought process. And so you have to call into question like what you're basing anything upon. This is lost in the sauce. Like this is when you're totally lost in the map. And I think this came up a little bit because last night I went on to Twitter for the first time in a really long time and like joined into a conversation on like it was titled "Can AI Represent Humanity or Speak for Humanity?" And there was a person in there that was like frankly quite strident about like their belief that they know what's going on. And it's funny to watch that kind of try and pull at the threads. Just it's like talking to Alex Jones in a way. You know, Alex Jones will just spew blatantly absurd things, you know, like anyone or like kind of a sane human being can see the logical fallacies that he uses because it's so terrestrial. Um, but like with someone who speaks at a high like jargon, like really technical terminology, most people just like don't have enough grounding in the space to like know the bullshit that is being espoused. And so like I'm able to just hear it like in real time, kind of the self-reifying illogicality and like the assumptions and the false framing. And so like it screams bullshit more and more to me as I hear people who are confident about anything. Like the most appropriate thing seems to be like radical agnosticism about what possibility is to come. Another way of framing this is like I wanted to say like, well, you can understand AI, which would be studying the map. You can think you know what's going on because you studied it so hard. In fact, that's one thing. And then you have quantum computing, nanotechnology like nanobots, synth bio. and brain-computer interfaces. Yeah, those are just fine examples. Those all have compounding effects on where AI as a whole will go. And it's not like a, little nudge in one way or another. It's like those have profound and extremely significant sway on what will constitute AGI or ASI. Like, do we start taking and having our minds like creating data, or do we just cut humans out of the loop altogether and have artificial data starting to be generated by the AI? Like, there's a non-zero chance to both of those, and it's extraordinarily significant. Not to mention that like the distinction between like synthetic life and like quote unquote like natural life is just going to get more and more and more and more like hazy and undistinguishable. Michael Levin's work, particularly. Certainty is so silly. It's so silly. It has to be some kind of waiting game at this point. I mean, that's my best intuition is that. I want to bring this up really quick because it came up. It's like Peter Ralston at some point in time in an interview with Leah Gura says like to the best of his knowledge, he had gone farther than any human ever before in some domain, like some series of domains. And kind of like reified it with like it appears that way. Like it appears to be so given like as he's interfaced with the world, that appears to be the case that he went farther than any other human before in this domain that he's speaking about. And I've reached that point where there's certain spaces where I have like kind of gone, is this the case? Is it really the case? Is it really, really, really the case? Is it really, 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 really so? And there just seems to be spaces where I'm like, I seem to have reached that point in some spaces where I I can't say anything other than like it appears that I know more than any other human about this thing. Like know more. I don't know if I want to use know more. It appears that I'm more conscious about the nature of it. That feels more right, that phrasing. And it's in regard to like where everything is going. So I say like, so I say it's a waiting game now. And I vacillate between like Does everybody wake up, or does only some portion of people wake up in this experience, in this lifetime, in this reality? I don't know. Yes. And the fact that I can like say I don't know about some things. There are certain things that I'm like, I genuinely am just curious to see, like I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And like that excites me that I don't know about something. That's cool. That's wild. That is indicative of being qualified to like speak about anything. Is that you kind of relish in the fact that you don't know about so much. And you kind of like highlight highlighting the don't know-ness. Like because that's the only thing worth really even speaking about or exploring, really. Like otherwise you're just like rehashing just the same thing. More of the same. Oh man, that's the other thing. Is like in Twitter yesterday, it's remarkable to just hear people regurgitate the same stuff. It almost gets to the level where you're like, this has to be an NPC. This is so wild to hear people just like be so like robotic about their like interaction. Like sitting and like mansplaining the paperclip maximizer to a room full of people listening and talking about AI. It's like, where are you? Like, that's like one, that's not even 101. That's like existing on planet Earth. Like you don't just find yourself in a Twitter space about AI and don't know about the paperclip maximizer argument. Like, and even if you like somehow there was like a really rare person who's just like never heard of it before, like just shorthand it. Like, why would you explain what it is in depth? And but it like goes on and on where the things that some of these people talk about, it's like they have to just enjoy listening to themselves speak or something like that. It has to be some kind of like neurosis or habitual, like unconscious thing because it's so not necessarily incoherent. It's just like kind of no duh. Like, why are you just like garbling fucking mouth noises? Then again, here I am trying to be more explicit because it appears that many people cannot grasp what I try to communicate. So, trying to remain open to the possibility that this is another conscious human being who just needs to have a kick in their butt to go, oh shit, wake up. Question is, who am I? That's the question. Duh. So I'm going to draw back to this thing about a waiting game. I was listening to Federico Higgins or something. What is I can't remember this guy's name. I'm starting to see the cracks. I'm starting to see more people who are, for as like all practical purposes, talking about the exact same thing as me. Like, and increasingly, I'm saying that's not a coincidence, that there is something that is attracting one final thing, the end of time. Yes, it's on Mew. It's Lucas Perry. This guy's computer scientist of some sort. Federico, something like that. And listening to the guy speak, I'm like, okay, there's no way that you just get two people like me and this other dude who are talking about the nature of reality, have independent experiences of the world, and come to such a radically similar conclusion independently. Without it being true. There's no way where you can just like look at the world in a multitude of ways and then become a generalist or autodidact or whatever and come to these conclusions about the nature of it all. Like Peter says, I disagree with Peter Ralston about this. Like he says, like, not everyone comes out the same. There's like this character and people, whether or not you become enlightened, like you come out differently. And what I find, um, I just flip that around and I'm like, look at the similarities of people who quote unquote become enlightened. Like their conclusions about the nature of everything are stupid similar. It's actually like it's not about how you do things. Like the character is not important. Like that's just one way of phrasing something and one metaphor and one simile and one like the practice can be fucking anything, really. You can do whatever. Again, a Peter Ralston quote, you could slip in the shower and become enlightened. Like it doesn't matter what the means is, like it could happen no matter what. And looking at like when someone does their best to articulate what they truly believe about the world and their uh and they've reached levels of consciousness, it's remarkably similar. The overlap is overwhelming, which is to say that there's something that's true about all of that, despite language being limited. Josh, this guy, Josh something, and Angelo DeLillo, hearing them speak about awakening and these like visuals that they have, specifically where it's like singularity and like ultimate paradox. It's like, word. I know what that person, like, I know what they're talking about. I know fucking precisely what they're talking about. Despite this, like, super, like, obtruse like, obscure language, like, even as they're talking about, they're like, it doesn't encapsulate it. Like, I can't put it in words. Like, words just don't do it. And it's like, word. Yes, that actually, that's sufficient. Like, the fact that you can't say more about it, like, that is indicative of like the genuine experience. But like the outlines of it, the structure of which they speak of is like ding 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 word. Yes, that's it. It's too similar. There's no, you don't hear people saying, oh, the tomato is like the final thing and worship the fucking tomato or something. Like, you know, kind of comes down to words like singularity, oneness, going home, love, paradox. Okay, all I'm gonna say for today. Love you all.